All right, guys, today we're going to be graphing a line. We've been going over how to find the slope, how to find the y-intercept, how to create the equation, how to create it from graphs, how to create it from points, how to create it from tables. Today we're going to go over how, if you have the table or you have the points, or the equation, how are you going to make the graph? So the first thing I want you to do is a quick warm-up on how to identify the slope and y-intercept in each equation. So go through and fill out what the slope and y-intercept is for each of these equations. Pause now, and I'll go over it with you guys when you're done. All right, pause. All right, guys, let's go over them real quick. So my slope for this one is -1/2, because remember, my slope is always my number in the m slot, which is right before x. So it's 1/2. This one is -x, which is the same thing as saying -1. Again, -1. This one is 1/2. And then when you have just x here, it's a 1 in front of it, because 1 times x is just x. So it's 1 here too, then 1/2, then -1/2, then 3, then 3. Now let's go through and do the y-intercept. So it's going to be in the b spot. So this is 1, this is 2, this one's -2, this one's 1, 2, and again I've got a -2 here. It's a -1, -1, 2, and -2. All right, if you need to fill out this chart, pause so you can do so, and I'm going to move on to the next spot. All right, we're going to be graphing from an equation as our first part, and then we'll move on to graphing from a table. Don't forget that your formula is always y equals mx plus b, in case you have points and you need to convert it. Let's go ahead and start. So if you graph from an equation, you need to do these 3 steps. You need to make sure your equation's in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Then you have to start by plotting the y-intercept. Then from the y-intercept, you use the slope to plot more points on the graph. All right, so let's do it. So if I look here, my formula is in y equals mx plus b form, so I can go ahead and start graphing. I'm going to start with my y-intercept, which is 6. Remember, my y-intercept is the point where I cross the x-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and label these. I'm going to go up by 2's here. So it's 2, 4, and 6, and there's my first point. So in case you're wondering, I'm doing 2's, 4, 6, 2, 4, and -6, and this would be -8. So then my slope is 2/3, which means I'm going to rise 2, or go up 2, and over 3. So since I'm doing that, I'm going to label this 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then on this side, I'm going to label it -1, -2, -3, and -4. All right, so now that I have it labeled, I've already got my first point, so I'm going to put in my second point. I need to go up 2 over 3. So up 2 would take me from 6 to 8, so that's up to 8, but then I've got to go over 3. So now I have 2 points, but I need at least 3 to draw a good line. I can't go any further up and over here, so what I'm going to do is actually go from where it came from. If I'm looking at where it came from, I have to reverse. Just like if you were going to go back to home, you would have to reverse and follow the opposite directions of how you got there. You have to do the same thing here. So the opposite directions are down 2 over 3. So there's my 3 points. I can go ahead and draw my line. So there's my first line. If you're still working on it, go ahead and pause, but I'm going to move on to the next line. All right, so for my next practice, you'll notice, I'm not in y equals mx plus b form. That's okay. I can quickly convert to get to y equals mx plus b form. Remember, in y equals mx plus b form, y is by itself. So I have to get rid of anything that's by y to get y by itself. So center of my equation is the equal sign. There's a -10 by y, so I'm going to add 10 to both sides. That's going to cross out, so I have y equals -5x plus 10. All right, so now to graph, I'm going to start with my y-intercept, which is 10. I'm going to have to set my y-axis as I need in order to do it. I'm going to go up by 5s. So I'm going to say this is 5, 10, 15, 20, and just like that, this is going to be negative 5, negative 10, negative 15, and negative 20. I'm then going to make my x's go by 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and negative 4. I'm going to start with my y-intercept, which is 10, and draw my first point there. And then my slope is negative 5. Remember that negative 5 as a fraction is the same thing as negative 5 over 1. So that means I'm going down 5 over 1. So if I started at 10 here, I need to go down 5 over 1, down 5 over 1, down 5 over 1, down 5 over 1. And remember, if I wanted to do this side of the axis, I just have to do like I'm going back home and reverse my directions. Go up 5 over 1, up 5 over 1. So now I have all my points. I'm going to draw my line. And there's my line. All right, let's move on to the next problem. All right, the equation y equals negative 90x plus 1,440 represents the time in minutes after x games of a tournament. So we're looking at our slope and y-intercept. Our y-intercept is 1,000 and our slope is negative 90. Since our slope is going to be negative 90, that means we're going to probably go down by hundreds. But our y-intercept is 1,400. So I'm going to go up by 500s here. I'm going to do 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to say negative 500, negative 1,000, negative 1,500, negative 2,000, negative 2,500. All right, and now I'm going to do my x's, and since my x's are changing by 90s, that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do 90. I'm going to do 180. I'm going to do 270, 360, and 450. And then on the other side, it's the opposite, negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, negative 360, and negative 4, or negative 320, and negative, no, 360 and 450. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to start with my first point, which is 1,400. So that's going to be just below here, my 1,500. And then I'm going down by 90 each time. So, oops, actually, I was wrong. I don't want to label these are 90s. I want to make these 1. Let's erase these. My style's messed up because we're still moving by 1s in our x. So I'm going to still say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and negative 5. So after 1 minute, we've gone down 90. So I'm going to go down 90 right here. That's going to give me about 1,300. After 2 minutes, we're down to about 1,200. After 3 minutes, we're down to about 1,100. After 4 minutes, we're down around here. And now I can draw my line. So this is going to be my line. And I'm ready to continue forward. All right, guys, let's go on to my next problem. So now we're going to talk about graphing from a table. Graphing from a table is going to be a little bit different from graphing from the formula because we're going to have to find the points. So step 1 is to make sure that your formula, once again, is in slope-intercept form. Then you have to plug in your x values to calculate your y values on the table, then plot your points to draw your graph. Make sure you have all of these written down. If you don't, please pause now. If you do, let's move on to the next page. All right, so our first one is x plus 1. So these are going to be my x values. These are going to be my y values. I need at least 3 points to make my graph, 4 to be really solid. Here's the points I'm going to pick. -1, 0, 1, and 2. These are the ones I always like to rely on. The reason why is because they're relatively easy to calculate no matter what my number is. Okay, even if I have fractions or decimals, it's relatively easy to multiply them by these numbers. So now I need to figure out what the y value is at all these times. So I'm going to plug it in. So I'm going to start with -1 for x. Well, -1 plus 1 is 0. So at -1, y is equals to 0. Now let's look at 0. When x is 0, 0 plus 1, 0 plus 1 is 1. So when x is 0, that's 1. You'll also notice that this is our y-intercept here, because remember, whenever x is 0, that's our y-intercept. Now let's plug in x is 1. So 1 plus 1 equals 2. So when when x is 1, y is 2. And then last but not least, 2 plus 1 equals 3. Now I have my points that I can graph. So I'm going to start with this first point, which is -1, 0. I'm going to go to x is -1 and 0 for y. Then I'm going to go to my second point, which is 0, 1. So I'm going to go up. I have met 0 for x. I'm going to go up to 1 for y and graph a point. Then I'm going to do 1, 2. So 1 for x, 2 for y. Then 2, 3. So 2 for x, 3 for y. Now I have my points, so I can go ahead and draw my line. I'm going to draw arrows both ways on all of these lines because these lines can go on forever. All right, if you need more time to draw, go ahead and pause it. I'm going to move on to our next example. All right, so once again, we need our x and y values on our table. And again, I'm going to pick the values -1, 0, 1, and 2. And the reason why I always pick those values is just because they're very easy to work with when multiplying. So let's go ahead and plug it in. So y equals 3 times -1 plus 2. 3 times -1 is -3 plus 2. If I owe you $3, but I have 2 to pay you, I still owe you 1 at the end of the day, so that's -1. Now let's move on to y equals 0, or x equals 0. So y equals 3 times 0 plus 2. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. So now we know our y-intercept is 2. We also could have looked here and saw that our y-intercept is 2, but anytime x is 0, that tells us our y-intercept. Now let's plug in for our next one. Y equals 3 times 1 plus 2. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2. 3 plus 2 is 5. So at 1, it's equal to 5. And we're going to plug in our very last one, which is y equals 3 times 2 plus 2. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So our last point is 2, 8. So now I'm going to plot them on the graph. I'm going to start at x is -1, and when x is -1, y is -1. Then when x is 0, y is 2, and when x is 1, y is 5. And you'll notice that is as many points as I can fit on the graph going this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line with my 2 arrows at the end. All right, guys. Now I want you to go on and practice it by completing your checkpoint. So go on and complete checkpoint 8 and Summit, graphing a line. Have a good day, guys.